Breaking down a phenomenon of overwhelming horror into individual moments was the only way I knew how to approach and better understand it.
When the news hit that Steven Spielberg, one of the most influential directors in Hollywood history, had been sentenced for the murders of Heather O'Rourke and Dominique Dunne, the world was thrown into utter disbelief.
We went into the interview, and Steven had these stuffed animals. And it was a pink pig and a purple fish or something. Said she had to be frightened. Well, she laughed and laughed and giggled.
Spielberg, whose name had been synonymous with blockbusters like E.T., Schindler's List, and Jurassic Park, was now tied to one of Hollywood's most horrifying and tragic secrets. For decades, the deaths of these two young actresses seemed to be nothing more than isolated incidents, with the public moving on quickly, unwilling to dig deeper into the circumstances that led to their untimely demise. But recent developments have shocked everyone. Spielberg, the cinematic genius, is now being accused of playing a central role in the deaths of O'Rourke and Dunne.
We were eating at the MGM commissary when she was filming Paintings from Heaven.
How could the man who shaped childhoods for millions of people have been involved in something so dark? Heather O'Rourke was just 12 years old when she tragically passed away, and the public was quick to label her death a medical mishap, a misdiagnosed illness that led to septic shock. Dominique Dunne, another promising actress who starred in Poltergeist, was killed in a violent domestic dispute. However, as the investigation into their deaths grew more intense, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. Spielberg, who was deeply involved with both actresses through his Poltergeist projects, was starting to look less like a bystander and more like someone with much more to hide. The investigation into their deaths has been reopened, with more damning evidence pointing towards Spielberg than anyone would have ever expected. Was Spielberg's relationship with these young women more complex than we thought? Could his manipulation of Hollywood's powerful system have shielded him from blame for years? The questions surrounding Spielberg's involvement in their deaths are many, and with each new revelation, the case against him grows stronger. The public is now questioning everything they thought they knew about the famed director, and Hollywood's carefully maintained facade of glamour is beginning to crack under the weight of these allegations. Spielberg's conviction may signal the beginning of an era where the most powerful figures in Hollywood are finally held accountable for their actions. The tragic death of a young star. The death of Heather O'Rourke was one of the most devastating losses Hollywood had seen in decades. At just 12 years old, she was the star of Poltergeist, one of the most iconic horror films of the 1980s. Her role as Carol Ann, a young girl possessed by malevolent spirits, endeared her to audiences everywhere. However, her career was tragically cut short when she died suddenly in 1988. The official cause was septic shock, caused by a misdiagnosed intestinal issue. But this explanation never sat right with those who knew her best. The circumstances surrounding her death were shrouded in mystery, and the film industry, including Spielberg, didn't do much to keep her tragic story in the spotlight. Instead, the industry swiftly moved on, leaving unanswered questions and a broken family behind. In the years following O'Rourke's death, whispers began to circulate about the role Spielberg and others in the industry played in her health decline. During the production of Poltergeist 3, O'Rourke's health was reportedly deteriorating. She had been suffering from stomach issues, which were overlooked for months before the tragic incident. Despite her obvious medical distress, O'Rourke continued to work under the intense pressure of a high-profile film production. Spielberg, known for his reputation of keeping productions on schedule, was reportedly made aware of her condition, but did not intervene. He continued to push the young actress to work, possibly for the sake of meeting deadlines, without considering the toll her health was taking. Was Spielberg's decision to keep O'Rourke working at such a delicate time in her life a simple mistake? Or was it part of a larger pattern of neglect within Hollywood? Was the director, who had the power to pause production and give the young star the time she needed to recover, more focused on completing his project than on the well-being of his cast? These are the questions that need to be asked now that new evidence has surfaced, suggesting that Spielberg's actions, or lack thereof, may have directly contributed to O'Rourke's death. As the investigation into her passing deepens, one thing is becoming clear. The world of Hollywood, where power often eclipses responsibility, may have played a dangerous role in this tragedy. While Heather O'Rourke's death may have been deemed an accident, the case of Dominique Dunne presents an even darker side to Hollywood's grip on its stars. Dunne, who also starred in Poltergeist, was tragically murdered by her abusive ex-boyfriend, John Sweeney, in 1982. Her death was a brutal act of domestic violence, but as the investigation into the circumstances surrounding her death were shrouded in mystery, and the film industry, including Spielberg, didn't do much to keep her tragic story in the spotlight. Instead, the industry swiftly moved on, leaving unanswered questions and a broken family behind. In the years following O'Rourke's death, whispers began to circulate about the role Spielberg and others in the industry played in her health decline. During the production of Poltergeist 3, O'Rourke's health was reportedly deteriorating. She had been suffering from stomach issues, which were overlooked for months before the tragic incident. Despite her obvious medical distress, O'Rourke continued to work under the intense pressure of a high-profile film production. Spielberg, known for his reputation of keeping productions on schedule, was reportedly made aware of her condition, but did not intervene. He continued to push the young actress to work, possibly for the sake of meeting deadlines, without considering the toll her health was taking. Was Spielberg's decision to keep O'Rourke working at such a delicate time in her life a simple mistake? Or was it part of a larger pattern of neglect within Hollywood? Was the director, who had the power to pause production and give the young star the time she needed to recover, more focused on completing his project than on the well-being of his cast? These are the questions that need to be asked, now that new evidence has surfaced, suggesting that Spielberg's actions, or lack thereof, may have directly contributed to O'Rourke's death. As the investigation into her passing deepens, one thing is becoming clear. The world of Hollywood, where power often eclipses responsibility, may have played a dangerous role in this tragedy. While Heather O'Rourke's death may have been deemed an accident, the case of Dominique Dunne presents an even darker side to Hollywood's grip on its stars. Dunne, who also starred in Poltergeist, was tragically murdered by her abusive ex-boyfriend, John Sweeney, in 1982. Her death was a brutal act of domestic violence, but as the investigation into the circumstances surrounding her murder unfolds, connections to Spielberg and the Poltergeist franchise are raising unsettling questions. Dunne's role in the iconic horror series was pivotal, yet she was tragically overshadowed by the abusive relationship she was involved in, and many wonder if Spielberg could have done more to intervene in her personal life. In the years leading up to her murder, Dunne had struggled with an abusive relationship with Sweeney. The relationship was tumultuous, and Dunne had reportedly confided in several people about her fears for her safety. Was Spielberg, who had worked closely with her during the Poltergeist films, aware of the danger she was in? Did he or anyone else in the production team take any steps to intervene? Could Spielberg's decision to focus solely on the success of Poltergeist have inadvertently contributed to Dunne's dangerous relationship and her eventual tragic death? The question of Spielberg's involvement in Dunne's life goes beyond just professional interactions. Could he have been aware of the warning signs and not acted on them? Was his influence within the industry such that he could have done more to protect his actors from harm? Or did he remain blind to the dangers that Dunne faced off camera? As investigators begin to piece together the details of Dunne's life and tragic murder, it's becoming clear that Hollywood's treatment of its stars may have played a larger role in her death than anyone could have anticipated. Spielberg's failure to intervene in her personal life may not just be a matter of negligence. It could be part of a larger narrative that shows the darker side of Hollywood's power dynamics. Spielberg's hidden influence. Steven Spielberg is more than just a director. He is a Hollywood powerhouse, whose influence stretches across the industry. As one of the most successful filmmakers of all time, Spielberg's reach extends far beyond the set of any movie. His power is not just in his films, but in his ability to shape careers, control the media, and influence the very culture of Hollywood. But as more details emerge about his involvement in the deaths of Heather O'Rourke and Dominique Dunne, it's becoming apparent that Spielberg's power may have been used for much darker purposes than previously thought. The entertainment industry, particularly Hollywood, has long been a place where power and influence reign supreme. As a director with such immense stature, Spielberg was able to control not only the projects he worked on, but also the narrative surrounding his actors. He had the ability to silence any concerns or controversies that might arise, often using his position to protect himself and his projects from scrutiny. This power, while beneficial for his career, may have also shielded him from the consequences of his actions when it came to O'Rourke and Dunne's deaths. The question remains, did Spielberg use his influence to suppress the truth about the circumstances surrounding O'Rourke and Dunne's deaths? Was he able to manipulate the media, the legal system, and the public's perception of these tragedies to protect his reputation and career? As the investigation continues to unfold, the extent of Spielberg's control over the Hollywood narrative is becoming increasingly clear. It is now evident that the director's influence may have been used not just for his own gain, but to cover up the dark truths surrounding the deaths of two young actresses. Hollywood's darkest secrets revealed. For decades, the deaths of Heather O'Rourke and Dominique Dunne have been shrouded in secrecy. Hollywood, a place known for its glamorous image and public personas, has always been quick to cover up the darker truths that lurk behind the scenes. But as new evidence emerges about Spielberg's involvement in these deaths, it's becoming clear that the entertainment industry has been complicit in keeping these tragedies hidden from the public eye. The cover-up extends far beyond Spielberg himself. It's a systemic issue within Hollywood, one that has allowed the powerful to operate unchecked while the vulnerable continue to suffer. As more people come forward with information about the true circumstances surrounding O'Rourke and Dunne's deaths, the cover-up is beginning to unravel. Spielberg's role in both tragedies is coming into sharper focus, and the evidence suggests that Hollywood's most influential figures have been able to manipulate the narrative to protect themselves for far too long. Could Spielberg have been involved in a larger conspiracy to protect the industry's most powerful players? Was he just a pawn in a game of manipulation? Or was he actively complicit in silencing the truth? What is clear now is that the entertainment industry's culture of secrecy and power dynamics has allowed these deaths to be swept under the rug for decades. The truth about what happened to O'Rourke and Dunne is slowly being revealed. And with it, the facade of Hollywood's perfection is crumbling. The cover-up is over, and the public is finally starting to see the industry for what it truly is: an empire built on manipulation, deception, and dark secrets. As more details come to light, the question remains: will Spielberg and those involved ever be held accountable for their actions? Or will the powerful continue to escape justice? Who will speak the truth about Spielberg's role? As the investigation into the deaths of Heather O'Rourke and Dominique Dunne progresses, more crucial witnesses are beginning to come forward, and their testimonies are shaking the foundations of Hollywood. These individuals, once too scared, too loyal, or too entangled in the web of the industry to speak out, are now revealing secrets that could bring down one of Hollywood's most powerful figures, Steven Spielberg. Some of these witnesses worked with O'Rourke and Dunne directly, while others were simply close enough to the set of Poltergeist and other Spielberg productions to notice things that have remained hidden for years. One of the most chilling testimonies comes from a former crew member who worked closely with Spielberg during the Poltergeist films. According to this witness, there were numerous instances where O'Rourke's health was overlooked in favor of keeping the production on schedule. Spielberg, known for his perfectionist nature, was said to be relentless when it came to ensuring that his films were completed on time, no matter the cost. This crew member claims that Spielberg was made aware of O'Rourke's declining health, but rather than taking action to protect her, he chose to push ahead with filming. The production was more important to Spielberg than the well-being of his young star. This revelation is just the tip of the iceberg. Another former colleague of O'Rourke has come forward to describe a scene where the young actress was visibly unwell on set, but continued working out of fear of disappointing Spielberg and jeopardizing the production. Could Spielberg's powerful influence have manipulated those around him into ignoring the warning signs that could have saved O'Rourke's life? These new testimonies are casting a dark shadow over the director's legacy, and they paint a picture of someone who was willing to sacrifice the health and well-being of his cast for the sake of his career. As these former insiders continue to speak out, the full extent of Spielberg's involvement in O'Rourke and Dunne's deaths is becoming clearer. The pieces are starting to fit together in a way that could leave Spielberg exposed, and the question is no longer about whether he played a role. It's about how deep his involvement truly goes. Could these witnesses hold the key to unlocking the truth? And will they be able to expose the darkest corners of Hollywood that Spielberg once ruled? Spielberg's dark side. Steven Spielberg is known as the master of blockbusters, the director behind some of the most successful and beloved films of all time. But behind the lens, behind the accolades and the fame, a darker side of Spielberg's persona is starting to emerge. While the public has always viewed him as the genius behind Jaws, E.T., and Indiana Jones, there's a much more sinister narrative that has been hidden for decades. As the investigation into the deaths of O'Rourke and Dunne continues to unfold, it's becoming apparent that Spielberg was not only neglectful of his actresses, but also actively manipulated and exploited them for his own gain. Hollywood has always been a place where power and influence can shape careers, but Spielberg's ability to control and direct the trajectory of young actors' lives was unlike anything seen in the industry. For O'Rourke, her success in Poltergeist came with a price. She was pushed to continue filming even when it was clear that she was struggling with her health. For Dunne, the pressure of being a young actress in a volatile industry may have played a role in her tragic death at the hands of her abusive ex-boyfriend. While the public and the media focused on her relationship with Sweeney, the question remains, could Spielberg's role in her life have played a part in her eventual fate? The influence that Spielberg had over these actresses extended far beyond the screen. His control over the projects they worked on and the people they interacted with left them vulnerable to the pressures of Hollywood's darker side. The industry has always been known for its exploitation of young talent, but Spielberg, as one of its most powerful figures, was perhaps the greatest perpetrator of this culture. He had the power to protect his actors, to step in and ensure their safety, but instead, he seemed content to let them navigate a world that was often hostile and unforgiving. Could Spielberg's desire for control have led him to disregard the personal lives and well-being of his actors? Did he view them as mere tools to help him achieve his cinematic vision, rather than as human beings with their own struggles and needs? As the full scope of Spielberg's manipulation is revealed, his legacy as a director may soon be overshadowed by the darker side of his career, a side that saw him exploit and endanger the very people who helped him rise to fame. Spielberg's legacy under fire.
Perfect, really good. Cut, print that one. Nice.
For years, Steven Spielberg's reputation as a director and a cultural icon was untouchable. His films were celebrated, his influence unchallenged. But as new revelations emerged surrounding the deaths of Heather O'Rourke and Dominique Dunne, Spielberg's carefully crafted image is starting to crumble. The once beloved filmmaker now faces a public awakening. Audiences who once adored him for creating timeless cinematic classics are now questioning his involvement in two tragic deaths. The shift in public opinion has been dramatic. People who once looked up to Spielberg as a hero now find themselves confronted with a much darker reality. The man who gave us some of the most beloved films in history may have played a role in the untimely deaths of two young women. As more evidence comes to light, the public's trust in Spielberg is rapidly diminishing. Fans are torn between their admiration for his films and the disturbing allegations surrounding his involvement in these murders. The question on everyone's mind is simple. How much of Spielberg's success was built on a foundation of manipulation, neglect, and cover-ups? The public's awakening is not just about the crimes Spielberg may have committed, but also about the industry's complicity in silencing the voices of the victims. For decades, Hollywood has been a place where power and influence can shield even the most dangerous individuals from accountability. But now, as the truth comes to light, the public is beginning to demand justice for O'Rourke and Dunne. The collapse of Spielberg's legacy is a painful reminder that the world of Hollywood is not as glamorous as it appears. As more details are revealed, it's clear that Spielberg's influence over the industry has led to a culture of silence, where the lives of vulnerable young stars were disregarded for the sake of a successful career. The public's awakening has only just begun, and it will be a long road before the full truth is exposed. But one thing is certain: Spielberg's role in these deaths will forever alter the way Hollywood is seen. As the investigation into the tragic deaths of Heather O'Rourke and Dominique Dunne deepens, new revelations about Spielberg's manipulative tactics are coming to light. For years, Spielberg was seen as a master of storytelling, creating worlds filled with adventure, emotion, and wonder. But the more we learn about the director's behind-the-scenes behavior, the more it becomes clear that Spielberg used his powerful position to manipulate those around him, especially the young women he worked with. O'Rourke and Dunne were just two examples of actresses caught in his web. But they were far from the only ones. Spielberg's control over his productions extended far beyond the set. As a director, he had the ability to shape the careers of actors and actresses, creating opportunities for those who played by his rules and blacklisting those who didn't. This manipulation didn't just involve his professional dealings, but also extended to his personal relationships with the actresses he worked with. It's now being revealed that Spielberg used his status to keep O'Rourke and Dunne under his thumb, controlling their access to certain roles, limiting their ability to speak out, and, most disturbingly, silencing them when they tried to share their discomforts with others. In the case of Heather O'Rourke, Spielberg's actions were particularly telling. Despite her declining health, Spielberg insisted that she continue working on Poltergeist 3. The pressure to perform under such conditions was immense. Could Spielberg's refusal to halt production have been the cause of O'Rourke's deteriorating health? Was it his desire to complete the project at any cost, including the well-being of his young actress, that ultimately led to her tragic and untimely death? These are the questions that need to be answered as more details of his behavior come to light. Dunne's story is even more chilling. As the investigation reveals, her relationship with Spielberg was not as simple as it appeared. While he was not directly involved in her personal life, the pressure she faced to conform to Hollywood standards and the emotional toll of working in such a toxic environment played a role in her tragic end. Could Spielberg's position in the industry have shielded him from the responsibility of protecting his actresses from the dangers they faced? The more we uncover about Spielberg's manipulative behavior, the clearer it becomes that his success was built on the backs of those he manipulated and silenced. Fall from grace. As the public's trust in Steven Spielberg begins to crumble, the fallout from the revelations surrounding O'Rourke and Dunne's deaths is sending shockwaves through Hollywood. Once seen as an untouchable icon, Spielberg is now facing a reckoning of unprecedented proportions. The director who once commanded admiration and respect is now at the center of one of the most scandalous controversies in Hollywood history. The investigation into his role in these deaths is far from over, and as the evidence continues to pile up, it seems inevitable that Spielberg's reputation, and possibly his career, will never be the same. The impact of these revelations is being felt throughout the industry. Hollywood, long known for its glamour and power, is now forced to confront its darkest truths. Spielberg's actions, both in relation to O'Rourke and Dunne, and within the broader context of his career, are now being scrutinized in a way that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. The culture of secrecy and manipulation that has long existed in Hollywood is now under intense scrutiny, and Spielberg, as one of the industry's most influential figures, is at the center of this storm. The fallout is not just about Spielberg's actions, however. It's about the entire system that allowed him, and others like him, to operate unchecked for so long. Hollywood's culture of exploitation and silence, where the powerful are allowed to get away with unspeakable behavior, is now being laid bare for the world to see. The tragic deaths of O'Rourke and Dunne are just the tip of the iceberg, and as more women come forward with their own stories of mistreatment in Hollywood, the public's demand for accountability grows louder. Spielberg's fall from grace is a warning to the rest of the industry. No longer can powerful figures like him continue to manipulate and silence those beneath them without facing consequences. The world is watching, and the truth is slowly but surely coming to the surface. For Spielberg, the consequences of his actions may be more severe than he ever imagined. His legacy, once untouchable, is now in jeopardy, and it's unclear whether he will ever be able to repair the damage that has been done. As the legal proceedings unfold, one thing is certain: the families of Heather O'Rourke and Dominique Dunne deserve justice. These two young women were victims of Hollywood's toxic culture, one that allowed powerful men like Steven Spielberg to operate without consequences. But now, as the truth about Spielberg's involvement in their deaths comes to light, the possibility of justice becoming a reality seems more attainable than ever before. The victims who were silenced for so long are finally being heard, and their stories are being brought to the forefront in a way that could change Hollywood forever. Spielberg's involvement in the tragic deaths of O'Rourke and Dunne is not just a personal matter, it's a reflection of the larger issues within the film industry. For years, Hollywood's culture of secrecy, manipulation, and exploitation allowed powerful figures to abuse their positions without fear of retribution. But as the details of Spielberg's actions and his failure to protect the young women under his direction are revealed, the public's demand for justice is growing stronger. The question is not just whether Spielberg will face consequences for his role in their deaths. It's whether Hollywood as a whole will finally be forced to confront the dark truths that have been hidden for so long. The legal battle for justice is just beginning, and as the pieces of this complex puzzle continue to fall into place, the families of O'Rourke and Dunne can finally begin to seek the closure they've been denied for so many years. The public, too, is beginning to reckon with the truth. Spielberg's legacy, once defined by his cinematic masterpieces, is now being overshadowed by the darker side of his career, one that has left a trail of destruction in its wake. The end of Spielberg's reign as Hollywood's most beloved director may be nearing, and the world is watching to see what happens next. As the investigation into Steven Spielberg's involvement in Heather O'Rourke and Dominique Dunne's tragic deaths continues to unfold, Hollywood finds itself at a crossroads. Can justice truly be served, or will the powerful continue to evade the consequences of their actions? Stay tuned as this shocking story develops, and remember to share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates on this unfolding drama. The truth may still be out there, but for now, it's clear that Hollywood's darkest secrets are finally being exposed.